If you watched this show when it was on TV, then you're likely a full-fledged adult now, probably busy sourcing a unicorn for you and your wife to enjoy in your dungeon after your engineering day job. Or maybe, like me, you're a bit stuck in life and wondering if it was something you watched on TV as a kid that did it. In this video, we'll be ranking the most disturbing concepts from the show called the Lexx and just working through it together. So the tier list goes like this. On the low end, you can eat while watching it, not too disturbing. On the high end, Ray Charles. You watch it, you might just go blind from the trauma. Okay, let's go. So the first one is these guys. So there's these things called moth breeders in the Lexx, and they are basically humanoid or machine human hybrids that are given birth to by the ship, the Lexx, and they are used to breed moths. So they're moth breeders. I thought this was disturbing. On first glance, you might not have thought anything of it, but when you realize that they're actually, basically humans with like human brain and human parts, but they don't know how to do anything except or breeding moths, it kind of reminds me of that girl who was raised by dogs, and so she basically has like a dog brain, and she's like kind of a human but kind of not. That's a real thing, by the way. So I find this disturbing, but because on first glance, it's not really that crazy, I'm putting it here. You can eat while watching it, you'll live. The next one, carrot probes. So in season 4, Laika, the species of carnivorous plant, their invasion of Earth was led or spearheaded by these probes, and the carrot probes are basically alien probes that go to Earth and other planets to taste the things on the planet, the living life, to decide how tasty it is and in what way you can make it as tasty as possible for the carnivorous plant alien life. And the way that they taste people is by going, well, up their bum bum. So you have these carrot probes, they're shaped like carrots, but they have metal legs, and they just basically jump up in there, get all up in there, and they taste around. So a lot of people they died from it, but then as they got, I guess, better, more acquainted with the environment, they started just kind of like wedging their way, like working their way through people to their brains, and then kind of mind controlling the people. And not mind controlling like complete mind control. It's a weirder thing where you can be doing things, living your life, thinking that you're okay, but actually there's a carrot that is secretly, it's kind of like, what do you call it? Like spyware or malware on your computer. You can still use your computer, but it's also kind of secretly doing this other thing. So it's like that. So it's creepy in that way. And then also to see, they can basically push a hole out, like push their eye out through the front of your head, and so you're gonna have an eye on the front of your head sometimes, and then the whole carrot probe can jump out of this hole in your head. It actually makes no sense, but it's still really disturbing. So I'm gonna put this one, I want to put this in hide your kids, hide your wife, since technically that's exactly what it is. It's basically SA, but it's a bit, I think it's even a bit scarier. Yeah, okay, we're gonna go hide your kids, hide your wife. All right, okay. So that's carrot probes. This is also carrot probes. 2 carrot probes. I don't know why I have 2 here. Let's get rid of that. Okay. Next one. Zev. Zev as a kid being raised in a box. So Zev from B3K was this girl who was turned into a love slave so that she could be like basically the wife of some lucky guy. But in order to do that, she was raised like from birth to be that perfect wife already. And so part of that raising was where you got to see pictures of her or videos of her just in a box with machine arms feeding her, and a screen with like basically a bot teaching her things, teaching her to speak and just everything. She was just being raised by like she was being raised in a literal cell. So that's pretty creepy, but it's not like I looked at it and I was like, ooh, gross. I'm putting that in kind of bad. All right, it's kind of bad. It's mostly sad. All right, next, 790. So 790 is very similar to the moth breeders, where 790 is actually part human. He's got like a tiny bit of human brain in there, that's specifically the emotional part. So it's scary because you kind of think like, oh my god, like we didn't know that it was a human being for like the first season and a half, and then we find out that there is human brain in there, and that he got that love slave treatment like on the brain, so it's like permanently like fried and like just like a love slave type guy now. Just devoted to the first person that it laid eyes on. But yeah, it's a brain in a tin can basically. So that's kind of like, I would give me nightmares, the idea of that, because that could be anyone. That could be anyone who just didn't even realize, except it's not a full brain. That's the only kind of thing. But still, it's pretty bad, right? Next, the tunnels. So in season 3 on Planet Fire, a lot of time, Zev and Stanley and, well, Prince as well, they spent a lot of time in the tunnels, and in the tunnels there are just pure psychos. Okay, everyone is just crazy, and so it's this claustrophobic situation because you're away from the ship, in underground in a planet with just these walls, just constantly just walls around you and sand on the ground, and then there's people who are all crazy, and it's almost like you're getting gaslighted by them because they don't even realize how crazy they are, but they're all crazy. And you've got guys who are trying to like torture Stanley and talking about how the knives are too sharp and you don't need to be too sharp, and then he got killed, but the person who killed him was also another one who wanted to torture Stanley, and then Prince, and just, yeah. So this one, on the other hand, though, definitely wouldn't give me nightmares. Not a Hydra Kids, Hydra Wife situation, but it's kind of bad. Fair. It makes the list, but it's not All right, so after that, what is this one? Oh yeah, Stanley on the bike. So also in Planet Fire, there was an episode where Prince put Stanley in the basically what looked like a kind of hell on Planet Fire, but not the hell of Planet Fire. That's later. But there was a hell kind of like thing in the towers, in Prince's tower, where people are just getting killed, but before they get killed, they have to ride a bike until they can't ride the bike anymore, and then when they can't ride the bike anymore, then this thing comes down and cuts their head off. So that's pretty disturbing, and that to me is a Hydra Kids, Hydra Wife. Like, I wouldn't watch this, like I wouldn't want my kids to see that, and although I guess I did. But yeah, that's a Hydra Kids, Hydra Wife situation right there. All right, the next one is these eggs. So there in season 2, there was an episode where Zev and Kai and later Stanley, but earlier 790, went down to this planet that was like a prison transport. Or there was a ship that was transporting prisoners, and they found that that guy, the bounty hunter, or whoever it was that was transporting them, he was dead. But the prisoners themselves were still there in these egg things, like the eggs from Alien. So those were already really disturbing looking eggs. So there was eggs like that, but these prisoners were in them, and so Kai wanted to lift one of the prisoners out, this cute girl, out of one of the eggs, and he tried to, but then she's like, no, don't. And then you look down and you see that there's like these cords going into her chest. And so she explains that these cords are there. So basically the egg is feeding her nutrients and like blood and oxygen and everything through these cords, because in order to make sure that the captives couldn't leave, they took their hearts out and put them in jars somewhere else on the ship. And the worst part about it is that the people who were having this happen, they had to be awake to watch it. Just I don't know why. Just to make it more disturbing. So I'm putting this in Ray Charles because that's pretty messed up. Okay? All right. Next, Bryson. Now, Bryson was like the smartest scientist guy working under the divine shadow that ever lived. And the only ones on his level besides him was Mantrid. So Bryson, his thing was he was like dying, like his body didn't age very well, or he was trying to keep himself alive, and so he basically had to use another person's body, a lot like a parasite, which is what he called himself, to keep himself alive. And so he got on the ship of the Lexx, and the first thing he did was empty his tube thing that he had going into wherever, maybe his kidney or something, letting all of this bile and just waste products spill on the ship, and everybody was plugging their nose. It was disgusting. Next thing you know, like 20 minutes later, he took control of Kai and he forced Zev to become basically his human dialysis. He plugged himself into Zev, and suddenly Zev was the person who was cleaning his vital organs for him through that process. That's pretty gross. Can't watch that while eating, definitely not. That's kind of bad. Wouldn't hide your kids, hide your wife, but it's gross. Next, now, the protein bank. So there's this idea When there was a divine shadow, the divine order, and the giga shadow, which is like basically like the real thing behind all of that stuff, was this giant insect that was being fed. So they had this thing called the cleansing, where they killed everybody in it's 600 planets. So 600 billion people's worth of planets were killed and fed to this giant insect through what they were calling the protein bank. So it was the protein bank was like a thing that was always happening. They were always feeding. Like since Zev and Stanley were even alive, all they knew was when you die, you're generally you're given to the protein bank. It's like a blood bank, but it's your protein. But what we really find out in one of the earlier episodes of the show is that it's actually feeding an insect. And so they show this one scene where after killing a whole bunch of people, they just basically laid rows and just a whole like assembly line belt full of human organs, just like, well, not even one assembly belt, it's like, I don't know, like rows of assembly belts worth of human organs being just rolled into this insect that was eating it. So that's like I've had nightmares. Like I didn't have nightmares, but I could see myself having nightmares about that stuff right there. Okay. This one is just another copy of that. I don't really need it. We can delete it. But yeah. So then after that, we have the brains. So on the Lexx, there are brains of people. When you first get on the Lexx, when Stanley first gets to the Lexx, there are like a 12 or something human brains that are hooked up to microphones. They are alive. They're being kept alive, and they're generally in good spirits. They are basically. I think they were important people. I'd have to research this to double check, but they're important people who got who like it's the part of their privilege. Like imagine like you become a doctor or a lawyer or some sort of royal subject, like advisor, counselor, and so part of that process so that you can live longer and keep doing that is your brain gets taken out and put in some other, basically a vat, where you can continue to do your work long after your body would have died, just as a brain. So pretty horrific, and something that I could see myself having nightmares about for sure. Okay, and the next one, Yorick. So it's also in the first season when they were trying to fight the Giga Shadow. Yorick went after the cleansing when there was literally only like 12 people left in like all of like those 600 planets or so. Or no, it was 100 planets, something like that. One of the priests that were supposed to be helping the Giga Shadow was Yorick, and he was actually a rebel, and he was gonna like betray the Giga Shadow. So part of that was, well, he had to kill the other guys, but he got killed. And then after he got killed, the Giga Shadow dripped proto blood on Yorick, which meant Yorick is dead, but now he's reanimated. So he's dead, his heart's probably not beating, but he can still just basically live. And the reason why the Giga Shadow had him live was to basically absorb him. So Yorick goes through these tubes in the giant insect, the Giga Shadow's head, and ends up Yorick's head staring, or basically facing, the giant brain, the car-sized brain of the Giga Shadow from the inside of its head. And so you wonder at that point, I wonder, like, holy shit, like imagine being Yorick at this point. Like how anxiety inducing is it to know that, like, not only are you dead, so whatever heaven you thought you were going to, maybe it's not even there. You might spend the rest of your life, a very long life, living inside the head of some really scary insect. Okay. Towards the end of that episode, though, of course, the Giga Shadow completely absorbed Yorick. But that, okay, true story, I actually had a nightmare about that. So I'm putting that right here. I had a nightmare that I was going through that thing, though, all those whatever, into the brain, and I saw the brain, and I was just like, oh my god, yeah. All right, last on the list, last but not least, Kai. Now, most people who remember Kai from the Lexx, they just see him as, basically like the token goth male lead assassin, tall, dark, handsome guy that all the girls are into. And, that's all true. And you might remember that he is also, in fact, dead. But I think most people don't really stop to think about what that means. He was the last of the Brunanji. There was an episode that kind of went through his whole story. So he was a part of a race of romantic warriors that decided to fight the Giga Shadow or the Divine Shadow at that time, who was trying to colonize them or something like that. And actually, they were all against Kai's idea, and they persecuted him for it, but eventually they listened to him. So he got everyone on his side to fight against the Divine Shadow. They lost. Kai was the last one dead, and what his and what he won for that was his body was reanimated, just like Yorick's, except kind of like, without any personality. He was like, totally dead. And his body was used for like thousands of years from that moment on to do exactly the work that he was fighting against, fighting for the Divine Shadow and the Giga Shadow. So it's really tragic if you think about the idea that he's like, his relationship with the Giga Shadow and with the Divine Shadow is pretty much the longest running relationship between two beings potentially in the entire series. And it's someone who's like controlling him as a puppet. And it's even more disturbing when in season 4 you realize that there are, well, season 3 and season 4, there are two moments where Kai has the opportunity to basically try to die. In season 3, it's in the garden where he gets to just try to decompose, and in season 4, I can't remember exactly, but yeah, there was situations where it's like he could actually die, and it was just what he wanted. Um, so he doesn't have much like in terms of desires because he's dead, except that one thing, which is to finally be dead. So I'm putting that in Ray Charles also. Actually, I don't even think this one should be Ray Charles. I think only Kai should be Ray Charles. It's really that bad. But yeah, so anyways, I hope you like this. This is just me attempting to make a video on the Lexx. I really find this so fascinating. I think it aged. I don't know if it aged well. I think it aged well, but people might disagree. And it's because it was trying to do things that were way ahead of its time, and it did them well, in my opinion. And yeah, so let me know what you think about this, and I'll see you in the next one. Have a great day. Bye.